Hey Steve, what sort of bike are you riding?
I'm riding the same as you, Wayne. A T7.
Woo!
How deliciously epic, my fellow adventure riders. We have not one but two tremendously terrific T7s being thrown around the bush by two riders with tight, taut torsos. It's double the fun, and it could be double the drama. So drop your cocks and grab your socks, because this is a T7 adventure. G'day everyone, Artist Wade here, coming to you from Timor. And this beautiful place sits somewhere between Scone and Tamworth. Wife Jackie and I have been farm sitting here for the past 2 months, and now it's time for a ride. And not just any ride, because I was meeting up with a fellow T7 rider. And not just any old T7 rider, I was meeting up with the one and only Stevie Wonder, the man from down under. It was about time I caught up with Steve-O for a ride, because we've been talking about riding together for ages now, and have never been able to make it happen. Until today. How exciting for Steve. So on this cracker morning, I pointed my mighty Timor 700 in the direction of Singleton. A cold 130-kilometre ride before I could sit down to eat my breakfast. But this is what us adventure riders do for our motorcycling fix. We brave the elements. Half the time we don't even know where we're heading. We just let the road decide, because it's not the destination, it's the glory of the ride. The moment I jump on my bike, my senses are alive, because the travel bug bites hard and motorcycle riding bites deep. And most of the time we find ourselves in the middle of nowhere. But it's in the middle of nowhere that we can quite often find ourselves. As for me, well, I'd be happy just to find the cafe I was meeting Steve at for breakfast, because I was already getting hungry. Time for a breakfast of champions at the aptly named Worn Out Wares Cafe in Singleton. It's a beautiful day, and it's going to be a fantastic ride.
Oh, but we don't want any drama.
Of course there'll be no drama. I don't know who Steve thought he was riding with, but when two T7 riders get together on an adventure, well, the chances of anything going wrong were highly unlikely. However, we would be doing some slippery causeway and creek crossings today, so one can never say never. Early on in this ride, it certainly looked like we might be in for some rain. And being the fair weather rider I am, well, I prefer my style of adventure rides with clear, blue, sunny skies. I certainly don't enjoy being any of that cold and wet bullshit. And it's easy to see they've had plenty of rain over the past few months. Everything's lush and green, the paddocks are full of feed, and the cattle are plump and fat. Every time I see them like that, for some reason it makes me think of a big, juicy, medium rare steak sitting on my plate. Look at all those Hereford steaks. And as soon as we hit the dirt, Steve was off like a dog shot up the bum. So far so good, no dramas, no rain, happy days. It's always a great ride up and over the mountain here on Stony Creek Road. And helping me catch all the action today is my Insta360 camera, which has certainly seen better days, my trusty DJI Mini Pro drone, and of course my GoPro Hero 7, which has definitely seen better days. After diving with seals in South Australia, my GoPro has never been the same, and nowadays is a huge pain in the ass for me because it barely works. Of course, when Steve told me he owns a GoPro, but he didn't bring it, well, you can imagine my disappointment. So it was all up to me, as usual, to catch all the action on today's ride. Through the tiny town of Upper Rookle, where in 1870 John McMullen had requested that the land where many of his descendants were buried to be formally identified as the Rookle Cemetery. By mid-1870 his request was approved. However, out of pure coincidence, John died not long after, and he became the first buried in the cemetery since being dedicated. I didn't know him, but clearly he had a competitive nature. Upper Rookle is a magic place to ride through, and the day was fining up, which made this fair weather rider even happier. And before we knew it, Steve and I were about to get into the good stuff. Hill climbs and hill descents. You know, my fellow adventure riders, I've been riding through here quite a few occasions, but when Steve told me that there was a Ned Kelly in a tree at the top of this hill, well, I certainly wasn't expecting to see a full-size mannequin. So, what are we looking at here, Steve?
That's one of my uncles.
I've ridden past here so many times that I've never seen it. The weird and wonderful things you see in the bush when riding. Anyway, onward and upward. We had a mountain range to ride over. Now, my fellow adventure riders, it wasn't far down here that Steve and I had a few creeks to cross, which of course is where it got a little interesting, and dare I say it, a little frustrating for me. You see, I love catching all the action, the thrill of motorcycle riding, and after videoing all day with my Insta360 camera and my GoPro, and having no problems at all, well, of course, at the exact moment that Steve-O decided to go for a swim, me bloody GoPro decided to shit itself, and my Insta360 was doing a great job of fogging itself up. Did I happen to catch any of the drama? Well, only just. Lucky for Steve, he placed his mighty Tenere on top of a rock, preventing it from going all the way under. I'm not sure if it was skill or just sheer luck. And whilst we're here in this particular part of the creek, just take note of the rescue team's response time, because we will need to do a comparison further down the track. And not to be outdone by Stevie Wonder, the man from down under, this was me riding the same creek the last time I rode through here. Not a bad effort indeed. Once we got ourselves sorted and removed Steve's Tenere, which was no easy feat, let me tell you, we were free to once again ride. Which brings us to Steve's response time, when I didn't quite drop my bike, but I couldn't pick it up. You know, when your bike gets thrown off course and you come to a sudden stop before you crash, you put your foot down to prevent your bike falling over and it starts to slip, and your bike goes past the point of no return. You can't lift it on your own, and you don't want to drop it in the water because your drone is packed away in your pannier bag and about to go underwater. Well, that's the predicament I found myself in right here, waiting for my teammate to come to the rescue.
Just ride through and push this bike up.
Well, the clock was ticking, I was getting tired holding my bike, and Steve did not appear to be in a hurry. Not one bit. Would you look at that? Here comes the little fella now. Finally, he's decided to give me a hand. Always remember, my fellow adventure riders, just like my mate Gaz the giant man baby always says, if your handlebars didn't touch the ground, then it wasn't a crash.
Oh boy, I held that for a while. Sorry. I'm getting... Were you waiting for me to drop it?
So effectively we could do another 100 Ks. Would it be 100 Ks to your place?
Steve's got fuel anxiety.
You always have fuel anxiety.
Well, the decision had been made to head to the Moon and Flat pub for a late lunch. It was only around 20 kilometres away. Hopefully Steve's fuel anxiety wouldn't get the better of him. The Moon and Flat pub is a Victorian country hotel built in 1895, and it has buildings dating back to 1860. The pub originally had stables with a Cobb & Co staging post. This newly renovated and rejuvenated riverfront country hotel in the Upper Hunter Valley offers an authentic Australian dining experience. Unfortunately, for Steve and I, the bloody thing was shut.
It's shut.
Pub shut. So
It's too far to Nundle. We'd have to go over the Crawny Pass.
Yeah, we'll go the
It'd be too late for lunch.
Yeah. By then.
The Colonial at Aberdeen.
So Aberdeen, let's see, Aberdeen, 42 kilometres.
42 kilometres, but...
To Google.
Oh no, Scone is before Aberdeen. Scone.
Yeah.
So how many Ks is
37 to scone.
37? Isn't it 51 Ks? That sign over there says 51 Ks.
Yeah, well, who do you trust? Google or the sign?
51 kilometres later and we found ourselves in the town of Scone, the horse capital of Australia, and home to the Thoroughbred Hotel, which is where Steve and I had lunch.
Steve, why is your nose black?
Because I keep picking it. No, it keeps getting itchy and I've got to wipe it and my gloves are black.
After lunch, Steve and I were off heading to the farm. Not before filling our bikes with fuel, so Steve could rest easy. A nice 40-minute ride would see us arrive on the farm just in time for me to show Steve around and to get wife Jackie and her friend Catherine preparing a nice meal for us that evening. Once the hard work of me organising the ladies in the kitchen was out of the way, Steve-O and I were able to rest and relax around the fire with a drink in hand, discussing the day's adventure. The perfect way to finish a top day's ride. The following morning here in beautiful Timor, it was looking very cloudy and overcast. And being the fair weather rider that I am, I was suffering from a bad case of wet weather anxiety. So after the four of us had breakfast in Murrurundi, Steve and I left the farm and set off on today's adventure. Today we plan to head back over the range and on to Singleton, taking a couple of different trails just to mix it up. From Singleton, Steve would head home and I'd return back to life on the farm. It certainly sounded like a perfectly planned half-day ride. But no matter how perfectly planned an adventure ride is, a spanner can quite often get thrown into the works. And on this particular occasion, it was the weather. Now you might think I'm carrying on a little bit, and maybe I am. But since wife Jackie and I packed up our house and started travelling around Australia, well, I lost all of my motorcycling wet weather gear. And if there's one thing I hate more than anything when riding, it's being cold, wet and miserable. So once Steve and I arrived in the town of Gundy, which everyone knows is named after a famous little Indian bloke, well, shortly after that the heavens opened up and took a giant dump on Steve and I. Not only did it rain, but it hailed, making me the one thing I hate: cold, wet and miserable. And for those that don't know, no matter where the rain enters your jacket and pants, it inevitably gets channeled down to your nether regions until you find yourself sitting in a pool of icy, cold, freezing water. Naturally, more layers would be needed if this princess was to continue riding in the rain. As we continued riding on in this miserable wet weather, I couldn't help but think of what Frederick Nietzsche once said: "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." So if this fair weather riding buttercup was to suck it up and continue on, I was going to have to do just that. I was going to have to toughen up a little. Of course that didn't work and I remained wet and miserable. Was I having fun? Well, of course I was, because I was riding. And therein, my fellow adventure riders, lies the riding paradox. Because no matter how bad and uncomfortable it gets, no matter how tired and exhausted you feel, you're still riding a motorcycle, and that, my friends, is a good thing. Steve and I thoroughly enjoyed ourselves as we braved the gale force winds to check out the views, helped some farmers move cattle off the road, and generally had ourselves a fantastically fun 2 days' ride, where I was finally able to catch up with my mate Stevie Wonder, the man from down under. So hit the like and subscribe button, because I'm artist Wayne Dowsett, and I'll see you on the next ride, and hopefully it's not f***ing raining.